It's like an enclave, it's like a financial enclave in the heart of London itself. Some people consider it almost a little bit like the Vatican. It's very old, it's very ancient. Many researchers consider that it's very likely that the City of London calls the shots on the financial systems in America. They've got control over the Federal Reserve, the Bank for International Settlements, a whole bunch of things that happen. This is like the nerve center of the financial world. And it's very Masonic, it's very ancient, it's very traditional. Our source attended a number of meetings with senior Masons. What they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago, and what they were discussing was they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going. They were discussing between them some of the problems that they had in the implementation of their plan. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. They were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. That things are being set up in many of the Western countries for there to be heavy controls over populations, martial law, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. Because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries. It's intended as a justification. All of this is just the start of something, because this story gets much bigger, and it's pretty horrifying. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western worlds, because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War, with a much more major nuclear exchange. There's no food in the supermarkets, there's no gas in the pumps, the telecommunication goes down, there may not even be water coming out of the taps. People are kind of thrown back into a Victorian era without the facilities to handle this, because most people don't have their vegetable gardens, they don't have their horse and cart, they're not able to survive in the way that we used to be able to. We're very, very vulnerable in our technological advancement. We're extremely vulnerable, and of course the controllers know this. He said absolutely it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. There's something that's changing, and my personal belief is that this is certainly being supported by benevolent non-human agencies, let me put it this way. And it's entirely possible that this increase in consciousness is happening in direct response with this escalation of violent, forceful plans. It's like, as I've often said in my own presentations in the past, it's a little bit like a movie script itself, where you've got everything building up to a climax, and the forces of evil and the forces of consciousness just kind of getting ready for some kind of final confrontation. Now, I'm not trying to be biblical about this, and I know that this situation which I've just been describing is a little bit like the Armageddon War, But I do not believe that this kind of thing will actually come about, as I said, and I profoundly believe that by becoming aware of these plans, this is the way that we avert them.